But current pandemic allows for 3 times that number. So 3.5 to 14 beds becomes, 3.5 becomes 10.5 beds, and 14 beds times 3 is 42 beds. So basically for 350,000 now, at just under 50 beds. When 50 ICU beds are full during this pandemic, they call that a crisis. That's because it's based on cost outweighs benefit ratio, which they come up with, and again, it's just a fabricated number. But if we're not for-profit system, where's this come up with? Because it has to do with return on investment, reported down the line, insurance-wise and everything else. So they can't say this is not a for-profit system, and it's very questionable about what they consider a crisis. In normal pandemic situations before this, as you got sick, they would provide whatever care you needed because it's based on individual rights, right? So we have an individual right, but just not to access the health care if they decide to invent a crisis out of numbers that they created because they're not prepared, because they don't even know what it constitutes an essential worker in time. None of these things have been defined because, again, they were focused on debt and dependency, not on responsibility and enforcement. It's about exploitation, and obviously in the way they choose to do business, with the way these contracts appear to be getting negotiated improperly for improper purpose, again, becomes a system of connivance. So you're talking, so for 350,000 people, now they're saying with 50 ICU beds full, they get to decide, based on cost to benefit ratio, used to universally deny or delay treatment to the end user. So again, I'm being denied at clinics. Why? There's a legal issue between me and Grand River Hospital. There's a legal issue, pending legal issue with us and St. Mary's because of the wrongful death claim against them for the death of John Lichty. Anyway, which David Williams is helping to cover up, so, and the whole department. So again, who do you trust? You can't go to the police. This is what they call, it's clearly malfeasance and misfeasance, relying on judicial immunity, which none of them have without good faith, acting lawfully, and for no improper purpose. You can't use it to overrule the law. The law is supposed to rule. They don't sit there and get to overrule the law because they have this judicial immunity claim in acts of bad faith. And it seems to be that's what they're pursuing. Either way, they get to have these landmines in there, and then there's a whole bunch of cost of taxpayers' money and other things that go into the system, which is unnecessary. Because had they done their job in the first place and somebody checked to make sure, they wouldn't have all these landmines. You have to have tribunals and go wherever you need to. But the law is clear, the rules are clear, they're just ignoring them. They're doing it how they see fit. They are ruling the law instead of enforcing it and upholding it. And if they don't uphold the law and don't respect the law, what's the rest of us doing? Anyway, the system pays regardless. In the medical system, even though patients are delayed treatment, denied treatment, and even though every time they put in for a payment, there's a form that says doctor's name, facility's name, patient, it's registered in my name with my OHIP number, saying that I'm the one who this was on benefit for, and yet they get paid for a referral which doesn't come out. So a referral they get paid for, and then they don't even bother contacting you to say that anything's been done or not been done. They just drop the whole thing, and then when you call them, then you're being a nuisance. Because you didn't get the service they've already been paid for. Why would they give you the service they've already been paid for? Because they've already been paid for it, right? Is there a problem in Houston? And again, the record reflects doctor, patient, treatment, paid. Oh, look what we did. He got paid for treatment, therefore you must have received it, right? That's what it looks like on paper. That's what's important to them, not what the reality is. So even though on paper it says doctor and patient, it's ROF number being billed, and they're not even ready to determine primary caregiver role. I had a primary caregiver. I had a family physician, which I had for years, brought both of my children into the world. And I was present at both times, and this is the first time I needed him for anything. And the minute I start having a situation that he didn't feel like he wanted a part of, because of the political flack that this tribunal system puts on every single provider of health care, additional costs, flack, you know, more scrutiny, you name it. But we are a hot potato, not wanted, and I was dropped for no reason, mid-treatment, in the middle of a brain injury, with complications, and I was thrown to the healthcare system. But regardless of that, the healthcare system has to take responsibility for who is primary caregiver. Somebody must assume that responsibility in the giving of that care. And the law assumes it is the government if you have no doctor. And these are the people responsible to provide these doctors, to train these doctors, to provide lawyers, to train lawyers, provide police, train police, provide fire, train fire, make sure everybody's done properly, they're acting lawfully, they are properly receiving extra training, such as police officers and others that are dealing with people with mental stress issues, especially in a pandemic now. You have no right to put them in any harm's way as much as me. And by having us both on opposite sides of where we should be, puts us both in harm and the community, adds costs, and here we are. What's your definition of responsibility? Because again, everybody wants to play blame. There's enough blame to go around. It's about responsibility. And the responsibility starts and ends with the crown, doesn't it? Well, if it doesn't, well then it's time the crown move into its imperial closet and twist itself one off. Because again, what's your definition of welfare? And they woke up one day and said, hey, I'm special. Really? Crime doesn't pay, eh? What's the difference between Uyghurs in China, indigenous people anywhere where this institution and regime has ever operated, any Commonwealth country, especially Canada? You know, all the disabled people, anybody in Palestine, any taxpayer that went before council and went through all the steps to try and go through it so that they undercut you, threw the rug out from under you and treated like you were notwithstanding. Because that's what it is. We are notwithstanding, and it's the same policy. It's the same people. It's the same ways and means. The only difference is geography and how much we fool ourselves into thinking they're rhetoric and bullshit. Here are the facts. This is the truth. I'm not doing this. Carrie's not doing this. The tenants don't do this. This is solely where responsibility starts and ends. And if you have any doubt, we've got 2 years plus of everything we documented. Go look at it. In the description, there are direct links to the actual public files and other evidence that is showing there is more than one problem here, and there is only one way to settle it. And it is obstruction of justice to do anything else. Healthcare, you know, they don't do any follow-up. You know, I asked for follow-up. I was referred for psychological assessment and care. I've been reaching out to every available resource that they put out there for window dressing. And let me be clear, when you think, they even went to the point, instead of having some place that works, they went to the point of putting Service Ontario in between anybody and everybody who tries to call any ministry. Because 9 times out of 10, you can look up at the government pages, oh, Ministry of Health. When you call that number, you're not calling Ministry of Health. You're calling Service Center through Service Ontario that answers calls on behalf of those people. So at the very least, even if you get through that, you have to repeat it again, because then they'll put you through the real people they used to, but they don't anymore. Because again, it's this thing about no matter if you write it down, say it right to their face, or put it on YouTube, as long as they say they didn't hear it, it didn't count. And here we are. So they're also talking about not-for-profit. Well, it is privatized healthcare because I went to 2 clinics. I went to a clinic that is supposed to follow the same protocol. Obviously didn't. There's no standardized protocol in healthcare or any other department. You're only left with one option. You go to a tribunal, or you go hire a lawyer that has his hands tied or her hands tied, that goes to a court that has their hands tied, because it's not about what the law is, it's about what they can get away with under judicial immunity, obviously. And they think this is a game. I'm tired of people playing with my life for the last 18 years because they can't get their damn job right. You can't lie, cheat, or steal. It's supposed to be not able to get ahead, eh? That's funny. Ask anybody who abides by the law if they're getting ahead. Stop making excuses. Anyway, you know, privatized healthcare again. So Onyx Healthcare, they are responsible to provide a level of care, and they didn't. They didn't have any continuity of care. They didn't have proper record keeping. And I was assaulted because the college allowed this doctor to operate after what he had done when he had harmed another patient. I don't even think it was a patient. I'm pretty sure it was the secretary or something, one of their employees. Ended up giving her a prescription for drugs and then had sex with her or something like that. Anyway, you can go on CPSO website and look it up for yourself. Onyx Medical Care. Okay, the main doctor was supposed to keep this guy under supervision, but obviously it's not working, because when I complained, they just went, I told them I'm not a patient there anymore, I want my file, and they said, it's not my file. So there you go, Ministry of Health and Legal. You need to explain to these people that that file belongs to the patient. They are able to keep a copy for their records, but if I want a copy of my file, especially as somebody who does not have an ongoing family physician, for my ongoing record to present wherever I happen to be, I have every right to that file. And College of Physicians and Surgeons, again, here you have the administration not clearly defining what is law. And it would solve a lot of these issues that would prevent it going anywhere, let alone a tribunal that's biased and protecting the crown anyway, at all costs, especially to the taxpayer. We need a full judicial review of this process. And let me remind you, Auschwitz was a process. They had a group of people targeted. They had a purpose. They had it all efficiently worked out. And again, everything that was done to corral them there came through lawful means, municipal act level. No difference except for time and space. I'm sorry, I'm one who's slated for the oven, I guess. I'm no George Floyd. And I'm not the only one. Serious ramifications here. So, Onyx, I have that situation happen. When I go to Benton Street, lo and behold, it's the ER doctors from St. Mary's and Grand River Hospital. But they're not private. They're separate from the board, and the board is now amalgamated, which means any harm from one or from the other, I am who I am, and yet I have to depend on them. And this is the place where what they did to Tom. Go to St. Mary's, I get to go with what they did to John. He went by his middle name, Tom. John Lichty. And again, simple. Go look at the form. What does it say? Because if it says that he didn't give her permission to do those decisions, every other form says that was wrongful death and or whatever, because he was kept alive, pumped with drugs. The ICU team is sitting there forced because, again, everybody's stuck in limbo because these people are doing what they're doing and not being forthcoming. And the minute they got in touch with the lawyer advisor, it should have stopped immediately, but didn't. Again, unlawful. One more thing that we've got on them. I'm not good. I'm not going to make it. My health is not good. I've been having heart problems already. I've been trying to get help, and there's nowhere to go. Nowhere. I've got nobody to help me. Nobody's standing up for me, but that's okay. That leaves me nothing to lose, so all I gotta do is tell the truth, right? Okay, anyway, so wrongful death of John Lichty. So basically I've been shut out, effectively shut out from my health care. Trying to get to Human Rights Tribunal to have any of these issues brought forward which are clear. I mean, the lawyer says he looked at the video of the arrest and said there's no problem with that. He said there was the other videos and there's no problem because they, and his answer was there's no problem because they got judicial immunity. So there's nothing you can do. And not even a human rights complaint, supposedly. Right? And if you don't have somebody to write it down, which is why I went to independent living centers. Independent living centers, they're just there to provide you services to buy wheelchairs, other services out there. When you have a real issue that is contrary to their cookie cutter world of force it down your throat mentality, of cover up for the crown and this collusion of connivance and racketeering on the level of these development deals, it's time we start asking for these questions, especially with the municipal election coming up, and possibly a federal one. It's a legal issue. You know, let me start by saying doctors, lawyers, government officials are 99% good and want to do the right thing. They are there because they are called from the virtue of the job, the ability to try and do goodwill, to try and assist and help people. It's always been the ones that are using it as a means of power abuse and control and whatever psychopathic tendency they tend to be petting that day or week or whatever, and the way they have, I don't know if it's obviously abuse of power. But those people are far and few between. But they tend to be in positions of power. You know, real power. And I even went to Carla Qualtrough when she was the disability minister. They like putting up these little figureheads of disabled people, take care of disabled people. Really? When? Again, we have 20 years of AOTA. You can't even get access to public documents without a fight, especially if there's any merit to what you're saying. You can't get any service anywhere without having to go through a overwrought, control freak system of complain no matter what, but go write it down because, again, everything's there. I'm not going to keep repeating myself. I have. And I'm about, you know, I'm not making it. I'm going to die. I know that. And once I leave here, my future's sad. I'm not kidding myself. So, but we are all being held hostage to this judicial immunity mentality to rule the law instead of just upholding, respecting, and abiding by it. And if you don't, why should anyone? Right now, as it currently stands at this address, 98 Bill Marshall Street in Waterloo, Ontario, we just paid another $1,200 in rent for May 2021 based on the unlawful order, based on the fact that it is unlawful for any person or persons to allow a residential rental business to take place or collection of rent to take place on behalf of this unwarranted, unproven, just because they gave them a license as a gift, and this does not meet the standard. And Atlas Property Group, when confronted with the ability to, we said after he posted the license for this year, you have 30 days to prove it because everything here says it's not. And the city and everybody was informed as well. So everybody's well aware of what's going on, and we're about, so based on the rental license bylaw and the fact that this is not the code and never has been, to date, since 2017, there's been $44,400 in unlawful rent paid to date for 98B Marshall Street, including May 2021, in good faith, based on a rental agreement, lease that was negotiated and reached upon in good faith, which the region and everybody else has no right to tamper with or interfere with that contract, especially if they're acting unlawfully. And they're betraying the taxpayer and their duty under law in an act of malfeasance or misfeasance, whether they're aware they're doing it or not. And in spite of the unlawful order, they are claiming just under $12,000 claimed in unpaid rent, which we had mostly in money orders ready for them to pick up until I think it was the end of the year that we stopped doing, because they're not coming to pick them up anyway. But the money's still here. And they're able to come to collect the rent or cause the rent to be collected at any time because it's a crime to do so, which is why they're not. Same as they did next door. As an association, we started it with that one there, clear in the record, again, notwithstanding any of the evidence that we presented, especially the fact that they are breaking the law. And still are. 674 days later. So that's claimed by landlord including multiple misrepresentation of licenses and actual fraud. This is criminal fraud. Needs to be investigated as criminal fraud on behalf of Koenig Holdings and Atlas Property Group, which is all Mark Koenig, and Theo Papadopoulos, which is operating as Commissions Worldwide, Inc., and also happens to be a registered agent with Kuba Marku. And there's a pattern throughout this, especially with Landlord-Tenant Board and Ministry of Municipal Affairs. This is criminal. And Minister Clark, there's only one way. They are claiming one side, we are claiming another. The law is what it is. You are required to uphold the law. So, to Mayor Jaworski, Regional Chair Karen Redmond, to Ian Kerr, Regional Manager for all municipalities, for Minister Clark, who is the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, to the Attorney General, to the Ministry of Finance, to the Solicitor General, and to Doug Ford. You are causing an unlawful business to be done in Ontario, and you are acting contrary to the law in malfeasance and misfeasance of the law. There is a hearing on June 11th. We are being prevented from any kind of representation, and I am calling you out. The only way that this gets settled is to do a full inspection on 98B Marshall Street and prove that the work order has been finished, that it has been honored. And you cannot just write a letter saying we consider the case closed before he even lifted a hammer to correct one single thing. To do anything other is criminal. To do anything other is an assault on the taxpayer and is a deflection of your duty under law, clearly defined. In the marketplace, it's $450 for a standard inspection. Where again, in the marketplace, because of the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing restricts the ability to, again, whether it was by some means, we were prevented from registering that work order with the land registry, and we are calling for the powers to be to do it immediately. And you must confirm that it has been honored, that the law has been upheld. And you are to do the context of rental license bylaw as well. You are to do a full inspection here. I have the full authority of Kerry Mills, but Kerry Mills, we are sending by registered mail. We've already sent by registered mail notice to Lisa Nadon on behalf of Commissions Worldwide, Inc., Atlas Property Group, and Koenig Holdings, because she's representing Mark Koenig in both matters. Both in email and also all entities before the Landlord-Tenant Board multiple times on this property, withdrawn, failed, removed. And our information blocked, our access to any kind of accessibility to get our issues brought forward on any level obstructed deliberately. Only a full inspection can determine the current lawful status of this property. The current legal status of this property 674 days after a work order mistakenly, or actually in our case correctly, determined that there was an infraction here at 98B as well as next door at 100A. $450 in the current market. Again, you got to ask yourself, why aren't we able to go and hire somebody to go, hey man, here's $450 and give us an answer, and then we can go anywhere and go, here it is. And the reason why is because the people that are responsible is the Ministry of Housing, just as they are for long-term care homes. And Mike Harris is involved with Chartwell Homes, the old premier. So if, yeah, they don't know what's going on with regulations and that. And as far as cooperation between government, again, federal, municipal, city, regional, have all made edicts about this pandemic. And let me ask you, who is the enforcement? Municipal enforcement across all levels of government. So is there any other questions as to who's able to and why, and whether or not they're the sum of their parts? And the fact that they called out the military in Ontario to assist the provincial government. Military is federal, has to be called from the federal level at a federal cooperative level, and it's usually only called out in times of martial law. So what is that? Undeclared martial law? In order to protect the cover-up that's happening in long-term care homes. And again, nobody is mentioning the word disability. Not at all. I just did. So, we're pleading. In my case, I'm done. When they're evicting us, and it doesn't matter what we do, I'm going to keep trying. I mean, I got my heart, I got my medical issues, and I'm not getting any help. So we're going to keep moving one step forward at a time, trying to do what we can to do the right thing, to move forward with good intention and purpose until I drop dead. And I'll officially be the second casualty of this property issue. And because once they make us homeless, my credit rating is destroyed. I'm obviously not signing a lease with anybody anytime soon. I mean, why? I'm at everybody's mercy. I've signed leases and had rental agreements and all that, and apparently these willing partners are able to do whatever they want. And even if they get caught, well, they do some sort of deal so everybody gets squeaky clean. Then it's just like what it looks on record, and that's what matters. Unless you go take a look at the videos. I'm glad I documented it, because if I didn't do it, it'd be my word against theirs. But it's all there. You can even hear on one of the links in the description part, they're there. There's a link directly to a copy of the phone call when I finally tracked down the actual inspector for this area, and he was ready to come out. And it was literally the next day, instead of coming out, he had somebody standing over his shoulder telling him he couldn't, which was more than likely Steve Ross. And we got an email from our local representative saying, well, I drove by but couldn't stop because I didn't want to bother you, and it's because everybody's been sworn up by the legal department not to assist us in any way, shape, or form. That is obstruction. So they can get away with what they're doing. Anyway, I hope you don't let them. I hope I live to see the day. But there's no doubt. I mean, I'm couch surfing now. I have officially been homeless, other than being able to be allowed to stay here as a guest, since I was made homeless almost 2 years ago. In October, it'll be 2 years ago. And that's another 2 years that they've allowed him. Now he's tripled his rent, tripled the value of the property when there's a lien that's supposed to be on it, collected his taxes. It's a legal issue. It's called malfeasance and misfeasance. And if we get evicted without this being determined, that is malfeasance, misfeasance, and this is my dying declaration. If I end up dying from this, or suffering more harm, or anybody else. Because, I mean, which harm should we put down? Where do we start? I don't know where we start, but I sure know where I'd like it to end. I'd like to survive it. I'm not counting on it. 18 years of it's not our problem. I'm not convinced. It's a good thing I believe in God. And with what I've been through, I will tell you straight up, there is a God. And I am glad. And you know what? The most famous part of the Bible, if you look at that stuff, you know what the biggest lie is? Can be unveiled in the Garden of Eden story. Right after they eat the fruit, and they discover they're naked, and they run behind the bushes, and they're hiding, right? They're shame. They cover themselves in shame, right? What happens right after that in the story, do you remember? God comes down and he says, Adam, why are you hiding? So what can we apply from that? Well, if you believe in that, number one, we used to walk with God in the garden, in heaven. We used to walk side by side, confide in him. It was only when he noticed we were lonely that he created Eve, right? And Eve led to sin, right? Because women always lead to sin, right? Sure. You know. And it's really funny because Eve had a lie whispered into her ear. And it was based on knowledge. And it was about, don't trust God. Don't trust yourself. You can only trust me in the lie. And what's going on now? And it's really funny because this great reset is just like a snake shedding its skin, isn't it? This regime has been tied to, historically, to everything that has been wrong with this world since somebody woke up and went, I'm king or queen. Not to say that that wasn't a legitimate thing at some point. Maybe it was holy. Maybe it was handed down from God, if God existed. But it certainly has been bastardized. And you have no right or to do this at any time. Not in the past and certainly not now. No matter how deluded you think you are. Canada and all around the world, there is a connection that they are ruling the law through banking and government. Because is banking following human rights law and other laws, or is banking dictating it? Everywhere in the world. And wars are financed by banks. Anyway, I hope everybody is well. Try to create rather than destroy. It's one step in front of the other. You can only do what you can do. It is what it is. Try and take solace in what you can't control. That's why, again, I always volunteer. I always give. Because that's one thing I can control. That's one thing I have the power to do. Even if it is killing me. It's all right. It's okay. Anyway, I hope I make it. But if I don't, I hope this stands for something eventually. Anyway, I'm standing tall. We got nothing to lose. So, yeah, I mean, it looks like they're going to great lengths to get us kicked out of here without facing the music. Hopefully everybody else can, let's all join together and change that. I think it's time we do a great referendum to say, I think it's time this imperialistic fanaticism, regime, imperialistic self-qualification of indulgence or whatever the hell it is put to bed with the rest of history. I mean, I'll tell you what, it just takes us joining together and saying, you know what, war is outlawed. Let's outlaw war. And the banks follow the law. Governments follow the law. It is not, or are we dictated to? Because the time to choose is now. It's clear. Let's just hope everybody's paying attention. Anyway, it is what it is. Try to create rather than destroy. I'm sorry for anybody who's lost anybody in this time. You keep talking about cancel culture. If you need to talk about cancel culture, just ask anybody who's been disabled for any length of time. And again, Hitler and all that started with disabled, and people couldn't defend themselves either. But you know that thing about the medical crisis, 50 beds and 350,000 makes it a crisis where they can dictate who gets treatment and who doesn't, because it cost outweighs benefit in a not-for-profit, not-for-profit system that is patient-centric, supposedly. No, like everything else in this government, this pandemic has shown one thing. They only have one plan: debt dependency. There was no plan for emergency. Even though they have emergency routes mapped out in highways, where's the plan? Where do you go? Everybody knows, oh, sort of about a 3-day ration thing or a week-long ration thing for at home in case of emergency. But that's like an abstract thing, right? And they don't have any drills, even though for Blues Fest and Southside Shuffle and other places like that, we have to have I's dotted, T's crossed, fire extinguishers in the proper place, everything exactly the way it's supposed to be, or you don't even get to operate, including an emergency escape plan, emergency fire plan. Everything dotted in triplicate or whatever at every single station before they allow you to open the gate. And yet for provincial, they didn't even have it defined. What is an essential worker, even after SARS? It was all about covering up then, too, because people started talking about then, and the colleges do what they do because they're controlled by the same people. Colleges, all those places, this history shows over 18 years what they are there for. By design, engineered for a purpose. Municipal Act prison. And it's really funny that it's in every single place where they claim to be democratic. And the more you speak out, the more you are the criminal. So, is the world going to wake up? That's up to you. Anyway, sorry for the length. Please be well. I need to see a doctor. I need medical help. I have paresthesia in my hands, in my lower limbs, my neck, my arms are getting weaker. I mean, my life should be what I need it to be, not being a lawyer and defending myself and everything, just to try to get an inch because they are misbehaving. And I gotta try and help other people that are in the same boat because, we're not the only ones. We are not the only ones. But ask yourself, what business are they in? I invite you to read this, to do the series, and please contact the powers that be. Tell them we need a immediate inspection of this property and proof that they honored that work order. We are actually calling for an inspection on all 4 properties that are all owned by Commissions Worldwide Inc., Theo Papadopoulos, which is 100A, 100B, 98A, 98B, and several other properties around this area. We are asking that the public record be opened up into exactly what's going on here and released publicly. We are asking for a full judicial inquiry or whatever. We need to get to the bottom of exactly what is going on here. And Law Society of Upper Canada and all those people responsible for training these lawyers and police and that, you better get on the ball because you are responsible for causing harm to those people that are trying to do the right thing. I don't personally blame any police officer that I've come into contact with. I've been around long enough to know, and I have worked alongside of you security-wise at different events and just interacting over the years. Where it's the training. It's the mindset. You are expendable. You are just as expendable as everybody else. We are nothing but a tool and a device, a commodity to be bought, traded, and sold. Out. There's something wrong with that. And if you don't know it, Maybe the mark of the beast is you stick your nose in the ass of the person in front of you or the thing in front of you. You just keep moving forward like a beast. A man created in God's image, if you believe that stuff. Or hey, just believe in yourself. But a man takes his intellect and his intelligence and he stands up above the rest. You know, living word, or you keep preaching. Either way, I guess I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to last. I'm hanging on day by day. We hope you hear the message. We hope you follow the trail. Malfeasance and misfeasance is their business. And this is a prison system, even if you don't want to admit it to yourself. Anyway, good luck.